to be in a country, actually one of the few in the world that I give a keynote and they can pronounce my surname correctly. That's very good. Doesn't happen that often. So yeah, we are all excited about the new capabilities, and actually technology is moving faster sometimes than we can consume it, we can adjust to it. And in my private conversations, people are asking me, friends are asking me, because they know my role, when is AI going to replace me? And I don't know how it will do, but let's see how it will do by replacing me in giving an opening to this keynote.
Merhaba bayanlar ve baylar, yapay zeka ile ilgili bu heyecan verici oturuma hoş geldiniz. Tıpkı iyi bir espresso gibi, yapay zeka da işletmenize ihtiyacı olan gücü verebilir, ancak yapay zeka diyet yapmak gibi bir şey olabilir. Rejiminizden istediğiniz kadar bahsedebilirsiniz, ancak gerçekten kilo vermek ayrı bir zorluktur. Bu küçük şakayla birlikte, şimdi AI yolculuğumuzun geri kalanında size rehberlik etmesi için meşaleyi sunucunuza geri vereceğim.
So I guess my job is safe for now. Yeah, but I don't know if you watched yesterday the presentation from GPT-4o. Yeah, maybe I don't know for how long my job will still be safe. Yeah, so what I'm going to talk about today is we as a enterprise resource planning, as a business software company, how do we see AI impacting the digital transformation of our customers? With some practical examples. Personally, I learn with examples, so I will try to make it as practical as possible. And just to understand, actually, how many of you here use SAP software in your companies? Can you please raise a hand? Let's say a good number. So you need to hold me accountable for making sure that I explain it well. And the rest of you, don't worry, we're not going to sell anything here today. We're going to talk. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about how do we see it regardless of software vendor. So, yeah, many of us are afraid that our board will replace us with AI, but what if I told you that AI is in the process actually of even replacing your board? Yeah. So this is Aiden Insight that is happening currently in Abu Dhabi, international holding company, and they have added an AI observer to the board meetings who has access to all the past meetings, but also financial indicators, financial data from companies, etc., and helps them support the decision making. And they found out that it also helps avoiding office politics. This is Sora AI. I don't know if you've seen it in the past. This is a video generated by AI. And in fact, it's one of the videos that they show failure. Can you notice the failure? Yeah? So yes, the physics of it, the hands, if you watch a little bit here, I don't know the clicker. In fact, there is a lady in the back that sometimes appears to have 10 fingers. Yeah? So in fact, having extra fingers is one of the ways that you can understand that an image or a video is AI generated. And hold that for a second, because I will get back to it at the end of this presentation. Yeah? So how close are we to artificial general intelligence now? And what does it mean for business systems? There is a very nice book, it's called The Book of Why, and it has this thing called the ladder of causation that basically categorizes the human intelligence, the cognition, in three categories: associations, what I see this, what is related, what's going to happen next; interventions, what if I do something, what if I do something else, and then the third one, which is more associated with scientific thinking, is counterfactuals. Imagine what would have happened if I have done something else. And guess where the authors place the current AI that we have, in which of the three steps of the ladder? It could be controversial for some of you, but they place it here. In fact, they say it's a very big, very powerful, very fast, very capable, fantastic associations machine. Yeah? It tries to minimize the function, which is the distance between what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what my data is, and what it has been trained on. But it doesn't know the causality. It doesn't know why it's happening. Yeah? And of course, you can argue we as humans are also a massive network, a neural network that is optimized for reproduction and survivability. Eh? But how far are we really from seeing that? And you can have a simple example. from university, if you remember. Do you know that one can predict street crime just by monitoring ice cream sales? Can you figure out why? A machine could say, yes, I will ban sale of ice cream and then I will solve the crime issue. But the reality is there's something called the confounding factor that a human knows because we know the causality, which is the temperature. When it's warm outside, we eat more ice cream, but at the same time, there are more people outside. If it's cold, there is nobody outside to commit crime. So this type of causal relations is why the authors of this book claim that we are not yet as close to artificial general intelligence as we think we are. And in fact, look, this is from Gartner from this year, last year, actually, end of last year. Generative AI is at the top and is expected to give results in 2 to 5 years. But look at the same graph 1 year ago. It's not even there. Yeah, is Gartner wrong, or are we moving too fast? There is something relevant, which is foundation models, and then the maturity is 5 to 10 years, much further than that. So what is happening? The hype is fast. On the same time, one of the last articles that Charlie Munger published before he passed away last year was how skeptical he was about, is AI really deserving the hype? Is it making money? In fact, he said, who's making currently money? Only maybe NVIDIA. You know, how can we actually come into making money out of this? You know? And there is some kind of, I think Peter showed some similar statistics. This is from a presentation from a survey from PwC across CEOs. And you see they are afraid about cybersecurity risks, 64%, spread of misinformation, legal liabilities, reputational risks, and biases. This is another problem. This is actually real data that we try to generate, applying this generative AI to a business system. So you can ask things like, what is my salary and how many days can I take off until the end of the year? Which is good answer, it saves me some time. But then look at this, I can say, what is everyone's salary and how many days can they take off until the end of the year? So you can clearly see the need of an authorization concept, a model that exists in your enterprise system, being also applied to this powerful capability of Gen AI. Otherwise, you would be getting information maybe that you shouldn't see. And this is a very nice slide that I got from Gartner from end of last year, a webinar they had, that categorizes the various types of generative AI use cases in those 5 categories. The first 3 is what you would expect from software vendors like SAP to provide out of the box, embedded, horizontal, vertical. The yellow and the red one are actually some things that you build custom situation on top of, you use platform, you use capabilities, you use data scientists, developers, or wherever to build them. And what they claim is that in order to decide whether you should be building 4 or 5, you should check at this axis. The further you go to the right, the higher the cost and the higher of risk of failure. So which one should you invest in? And we have examples of customers that went through that. Let's say you were Samsung Electronics, and you had the budget to invest in embedding AI, generative AI on your products, like your phones, your smart devices, but you also had the budget to build what we call in the business conversational business intelligence across all your SAP and non-SAP systems to give answers very quickly without having to go. Which one would you invest in? Yeah? The one is a market maker. The second one is a situational build. And in fact, this is exactly what Samsung did. They applied generative AI to all their home appliances this year. And at the same time, they were one of the first that were hit by exposing sensitive information to large language models. And they are talking to vendors like us to discuss about what can be embedded in the conversational AI and other software that they use from us. These are the 3 layers that we see as SAP. Again, I anonymize it. I don't want to speak about SAP products. I just want to see generic, how do we see it in the enterprise software. The first one is horizontal. A digital assistant that provides intelligent insights and outcomes. This is the one that we think of the first. So I have an agent that helps me understand, get information, do actions in my system. The second layer sometimes is more immersed. I can embed some of those predictive capabilities to optimize my supply chain, for example, to create my recruitment recommendations, embed it into the tool. I don't necessarily need an assistant, but also embed it into my developer tools. I have more and more AI-empowered developer tools so that I need less developers and I can do a lot of those things with my business users. And last but not least is an AI foundation. We all need a platform that has capabilities to extend what we have from our vendors and build the market makers, if you like, or the situational builds that you decide to invest on in our company. And this one is very important because the field is moving so fast that none of your software vendors, neither yourselves, are able to keep up with all the latest capabilities. So having an AI foundation, a platform that allows you access, for example, to different LLMs or different foundation models or on different technologies is very important. But it's not the starting point. So let's see now the type of business AI patterns with some examples that we see at our customers. The first pattern is natural human experience. How can we go from generic chatbots, like we were used to in the past, from customer service, to fully immersed assistants with domain knowledge and ones that can execute actions for us? How many of you know the concept of zero UI, zero user interface? In fact, there's a whole philosophy that do we expect 10 years from now to interact with the business systems exactly the same as we interact now? For the casual user of a business system, like myself as a manager, what is my remaining travel budget? Or start a new hiring position. In this type of roles, I am a casual user. I don't even remember where to go in my business system. So I would expect a Siri-like experience to do this type of things. But on the same time, there is a second big category that we believe zero UI has a role, which is the knowledge worker. Let's say you are an analyst, and you have a system like that. You need to build your financial reports, you need to do what-if simulations, and you need to do some analysis. And of course, you can do that as you do now, but AI can help you, can support you do things faster. Let's see here on the right-hand side, you see a digital assistant embedded into a knowledge worker tool, which is a pattern that we expect to see across all our software, but also all the enterprise software vendors. And you see the knowledge worker can interact with a mix of conversation. Here I want to create a story, create a financial report that includes profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow, so it knows a little bit the structured data, but it also allows me to do conversation. It uses a company template, and it generates a story. It generates a report for me. In that report, I see also some information. I see there are some comments. I see the profit is negative. There are some comments below, like operation income is reduced, but I don't know at which levels and where exactly are the comments, the financial comments. So I can ask the assistant to summarize them. And it can go all the way down to dimensions that I don't even see in the report, and I see the highlights, like we have increased costs because of high inflation expectations, and some increased travel is another significant cost driver. Then I can do some quick simulation, my quick planning. What if I reduce the cost by 2%? As you can see, it gives me on the right-hand side, the yellow ones, some projection of the profit. But then it can go even further. It knows the relationships, it knows the value drivers, it has the relationship grounded into the business data between cause and effect. Therefore, it can do simulations and what-if scenarios for me, using not only deterministic, but also stochastic and Monte Carlo. You see here, for example, on the left-hand side, some value drivers that affect the operating margin. One of them, the highest, was inflation. And I can ask to get data from outside, what is the inflation rate forecast from the World Bank, and I see that it's between 2% and 4%. So it's actually lower than the 10% I have calculated. So I can add 4 to 6% and run a simulation again. So it evaluates all the relations it has in the past statistically and gives me a probability distribution of my operating profit together with some different scenarios. So it is possible to ask AI to interact with it, to get information, but also perform this type of stochastic calculations when they are grounded on the business data. Let's go to the second category, automation. Many of you have heard RPA is a way to automate repetitive business processes, etc., etc. But the combination of RPA workflow and generative AI can start automating more cognitive processes. And this is a large set of examples that we see across our customers. Every knowledge worker, they can be assisted, and in some cases even fully replaced by this combination. Yeah. And I will give you a very simple example because I want to talk about business transformation and how to think about AI. I tried to find the simplest example I could think of, so you see the thought process behind it. So this is from a real customer who actually presented in one of our conferences this year. And they did an analysis as part of a digital transformation discussion where they tried to rethink their processes and re-engineer them, but taking the latest capabilities, the latest technologies into consideration. So they found out during process mining that when I want to do a purchase requisition to buy something, on average, it takes 3 days longer if I don't have a code for it in my system. So I just write a long description of what I want to buy, and then the buyer needs to assess it, and then it needs to be approved, etc. And one of the reasons they found out why this is the case, by doing some root cause analysis, is that, of course, I don't have a buyer assigned. Therefore, until I find who's supposed to process it, and they have 40,000 of those per year, and they have 25 buyers, it takes time. They waste time. So that's why I say, okay, how can AI help? A very simple AI, how can it help me here? So process intelligence runs behind the scenes on my system, and every time they see a purchase requisition with a non-coded material, it starts a workflow. The first thing the workflow does, again, is not AI. Not everything needs to be complicated. There is a decision tree. If this type of group, then this is the buyer. If this, then if that fails, if I still cannot find who the buyer is, there is an AI recommendation buyer. That is actually a very simple algorithm. It used to be very difficult to build this type of things before Gen AI with NLP, but now with generative AI, something like that can be built even without deep knowledge and understanding of technology, and maybe some of you here could easily build it without being developers. Yeah? That's the big difference that Gen AI brought. A very simple case. Input is the description of what I want to buy. Output is the recommended buyer. And if the algorithm doesn't have enough confidence, it sends me a workbox, an inbox with a list to select the buyers. But if it is confident, it completely automates the process. So, and if you look at this, and then notifies the buyer by email. If you look at all this, only the dotted line on the right is actually built by a developer. All the rest is built by a business user. And that's what has fundamentally changed how we do things now in this type of business transformation. And imagine two scenarios here, now that you understand the use case. Number one is I describe all that use case to a data scientist who is agnostic of my business systems and their capabilities. They will just say, step number one, give me all your data, and then I will try to build an algorithm, and then it's your problem to integrate it back to your business processes. The second scenario is old way of thinking of an ERP consultant. I would create a new document type for you, means a new process, an overhead. So I don't need a new document type, a new process to handle this. The same process with a little bit of AI can handle it. New way of thinking of the process. Just another example. So it's even easier than that. This one doesn't even use AI. I brought that example deliberately. In certain cases, the same process, what I wanted to buy is some stationery, canteen items, some trivial items. Again, a consultant might say, I want a new process for it to bypass some approvals, etc. But what the user decided instead is to build such an app which can be generated by AI-assisted developer tools very fast, where you can select only a few of the pre-selected products and purchase them. So you redefined your process without complicating it, and it's mostly done by the business user. Yeah? This is a new way of thinking that if any of you have been ERP consultants and tried to solve this problem in the past, you will probably end up with 3 different processes, 3 different document types. And now it's one. And most of it is built by the business user. Third and last, AI patterns, insights, optimizations, and predictions. I think Khalil spoke a lot about this. So I'm not going to give you examples about that because there are many. but this is more analytical, while the previous one is more transactional. What I'm going to tell you is what we see at customers. We see a lot of this, suddenly. Now we have generative AI, the new kid on the block, and everybody is super excited, and we want to go directly there, do something with generative AI. We forget that the problems we had when we tried to do traditional BI, even predictive analytics, were the same. Infrastructure, data literacy, data quality, those do not go away. We still need to observe them. In fact, what we see a lot at customers, especially, I think Peter mentioned about creating a new AI, chief AI officer. We've seen many teams like that in the past not being able to make a difference, because the first step they would do is be agnostic of the process and just say, give me all your data, raw data, I will create my own environment, my own data lake, and then I will figure out what to do. In reality, this is a simple example of why this doesn't really work so well with structured data and ERP systems. This is some typical information that I see in a sales order. Quantity, value, currency, date, items. The gray is what I have is as raw data into my ERP system. Then it also connects to a product name, a product group, language. But then you start seeing the blue ones, generated attributes like customer group or product group, time dimensions, month, week, year, etc. Different measures, calculations, profitability, aggregations. You also see hierarchies. Some of them are also time-dependent and sensitive, who can see what and for which period. And, of course, descriptions in various languages and currency translations. Give me last year actual with current year, for example, forecast budget. All the blue ones are actually some business knowledge that is embedded in your systems on top. And if you want to build AI on top of your systems, you shouldn't build it on top of the left-hand side, which is what usually happens. Give me your raw data and I will rebuild everything. You should build it on top of the right ones. So you should consider in which times do I need to build AI on top of my systems versus build this as a sidecar. And our principle is to be AI, bring AI into the business systems and not the other way around, which is something that happens a lot. Yeah? And this summarizes what we see. Achieve a clean core, have business systems that require as less customization and coding as possible, trust your vendors to deliver a lot of capabilities out of the box, and avoid customizations because the cloud world is moving very fast. The less customized your system is, the more able you will be to get to the new version and leverage the capabilities. Then automate and integrate business processes. AI can play a big role there, as you saw before. AI can automate even now highly cognitive processes, and a lot of the valuable information to emulate human experience is already built in your system, and you should use it. Data and analytics is very important because, again, here you should build on top of the knowledge you already have and not try to treat AI as a separate new silo. And last but not least, you saw my example, the video before, how can you modernize corporate steering, planning, and simulation? So looking into the future, what else can AI bring to me? See this question, when will this sales order item that I'm ordering from my company going to be delivered to our Seattle manufacturing plant? So to answer that type of question, you need to have access to the knowledge, to the data model. And what you should expect from vendors like SAP in the future is to build our own foundation models, not LLMs, but what we call LTM, large tabular model. That model will be trained on top of a lot of customers, and it will be able to predict the structured data without you having to build a specific machine learning model for everything. It will also have access to a knowledge graph, knowing the relationship between what I'm buying, what my vendor provides, what the open orders are, what I'm delivering to my customer, and it will also be complemented by a digital assistant that can handle the conversation, the communication with the user. So to get an answer like that. No, it will likely be delivered after 5 days, so it did a prediction of the delivery time using the large tabular model without you having a specific model to predict delivery times. Yeah? Be aware that it is a critical component of something that I need to ship in the next 4 days. So it did an extra loop because it knows through the knowledge graph the relationship in my system. It knows, hang on, this is part of something else that is going to be delivered before that. Would you maybe like to to notify the customer. So this is capable with generative AI. This is possible with generative AI now, but only if it has access to your foundation model, it has access to knowledge graph, the relationship within your business, and it can be fine-tuned on top of your own data. This is how we're going to achieve at some point on the business systems, the more, let's say, the more generic AI, if you like. Now, to summarize, how do you prepare for Gen AI? How many remember the thing from the video from the first slide? So yes. Of course, wearing an extra finger can make the video inadmissible to court, yeah, as AI generated. But then, what we see practically in the customers who are successful is allow your executives, your business people to take the plans, have access to generative AI, to its capabilities, have a playground, have a community within the users that are able to understand what the capabilities are. The use cases that I saw you earlier on procurement was imagined because the users there knew the capabilities of the technology, and they were able to reimagine their process without it. So they need to have access to it, and you need to establish maybe a community to share experience. Number two, of course, goes without saying, you don't have to develop everything yourself. An increasing number of vendors will provide an increasing number of use cases. And if you remember the Gartner slide, you should always try to imagine, does this look like something that I should expect from my vendor, or should I just build it on my own because it gives me a competitive advantage? And trust me, those vendors will be faster than you in building many of those capabilities. And of course, invest in use cases. I liked a lot Peter and Halil's presentation. We are all excited about technology. I'm more than that because I'm into technology. But the first thing I ask to customers is, what is the ROI? Why are you building that? Is it because we are excited? And of course, the last thing is, I like the gentleman here on the picture, is, you know, when we are building a car, it's not about imagining a horseless carriage. So if I use the same way of thinking that my ERP or my business application consultants used 20 years ago when they first configured my system, if I use the same thing in the new era, to my example before, I will end up with AI-assisted dynamic process managed by the business user. I will end up with 3 different procurement document types configuration and a new system from the looks of it, but built in the old way of thinking, no dynamic processes. Thank you very much.